Hello, everyone. And of course, I can't leave you without a little recap. Again, there are so many details. It's absolutely impossible to keep them in mind. I would say that now we are going to be mostly in the area of the northern and the southern walls of the Temple Mount. Since I don't have a pointer, I will just try to be as descriptive as possible verbally. So basically, the Muslim quarter where the Herod Gate is, this is the northern wall. This is the northern. North of Jerusalem, of the old city of Jerusalem, and hence the Temple Mount itself. And to the right hand side where the Golden Gate is, this is the eastern side of the Temple Mount. And as you can see, the part of the Temple Mount, it's that eastern wall of the Temple Mount is connected. It's kind of built in with the walls of the old city itself. So the old city itself has the four quarters. However, the Temple Mount doesn't belong to any of the quarters. It's kind of different. It stands out from all perspectives and all senses, and it's policed by Israel, but it is under control, and it belongs to, well, not exactly belongs to, but it's under control of WAQF, the Jordan-based the organization that deals with the Muslim sites in the Holy Land and Jordan. So let's get down. Again, I will be giving some recaps, but also adding some new information to the places we have already seen. And yes, if you, being non-Muslim, want to see the Temple Mount, the only way for you to do that is to enter from the Jewish quarter, that is from the south. And this is the gate that you need to take. So first you enter the Jewish quarter through the Dung Gate, and then that's the quickest way to access both the Western Wall and the Temple Mount. So you see this wooden kind of a tunnel, wooden corridor. That's the only way for you to access it. It's called the Maghrabi Gate because of the Maghrab actually means Morocco. So Moroccan quarter used to be there, and the Moroccan Gate. Why the Temple Mount is so important? Quick recap. So first there was built the first temple of Solomon. Then that is about 1980s BCE. Then the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BCE and was later on rebuilt after the Babylonian exile, when the Jews were able to return to their land about 50 years later. It was rebuilt in a much smaller size, a lot more modest, and that's how it remained up until the first century BCE, when Herod the Great decided to significantly extend the Temple Mount itself and also enlarged and completely revamped the temple itself. So what we're looking at, and I'm using a lot of graphic works by Lynn Rittmeyer, and a lot of, I would say that his books and his research and his surveys of the Temple Mount carried out in the 1960s and 70s primarily, but also ongoing. This is the most reliable source of information with regards to everything of the Temple Mount, and every fully fledged archaeologist, historian, and tour guide has this book. I would say even on the bedside table. And I used to sleep in it. I actually used to have this book with me in my bed a couple of times, especially when I was getting ready for my exams. So no wonder I rely so much on what Lindrit Mayer is saying. So the important thing is that the way the Temple Mount looks nowadays, its size, that's already the result of the Herod's extensions. And the idea is, so since there are a lot of, well, okay, not a lot, but there is this narrative. Some claim that the temple had never been built. Some claim the temple had been built, but not on the Temple Mount, but in the city of David. So the message of this tour is basically provide a good enough archaeological and different sorts of extra biblical sources to prove that the temple had been built, the temples had existed, and a lot of archaeology is still there. Even some stones from the first temple 3,000 years ago are still there, and they're even visible. So my tour is not about saying whose religion is better, whose religion is worse, who's good, who's the bad guy. No, it's about archaeology. And yes, right now, Jerusalem and the Temple Mount is the third holiest site for Muslims. That's also true. But the Temple Mount is equally important for the three monotheistic Abrahamic religions. That's what this story is about. So, as you can see, and thank you so much, Holy Land Site, for creating all these visuals, because without a pointer and without any, I would say, resources to create also visual aids, I can at least use that for my highly non-commercial tours. So the idea is that we know from a Mishnah, which is the collection of unwritten laws about the life of the Jewish community. Eventually, it was put into writing. We know that the platform of the Solomon's temple was 500 cubits, like royal cubits. You have the dimensions, 861 feet, and that's exactly what Reed Meyer was looking for. And he was able to see the stones and identify in different ways, mostly on the basis of the typical features of the masonry of certain periods, that is the Solomonic period, so 3,000 years ago. He was able to identify exactly those spots where you can see the boundaries between the borders between the Solomon temple platform and the subsequent extensions, and there were several of them. So, so far and long ago, we discussed the archaeology and the interesting findings in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, as well as the Dome of the Rock. We will be coming back to it because there is even more to discuss, but later on. So we are now roaming and exploring the other spots on the Temple Mount. And as I said, we are now concentrating on the northern side and on the eastern side. That is where the Golden Gate is. And as you can see, the interesting thing here on this scheme, on this layout of the Old City of Jerusalem, you can see that the Temple Mount itself is not strictly rectangular. You can see that. So, but this is the result of much further extensions and also, Herodian extensions. But originally, the Solomon's temple platform was perfectly square. Now, so what we're looking at here, that's from the eastern side, in the red color, that's exactly the eastern wall of the Temple Mount. We spoke that, well, and let's put it like this, especially for those who haven't seen previous episodes, that will kind of be, I would say, a little bit more helpful. So far we have been able to identify where the northern side and the western side of Solomon's temple period walls are. Again, we mostly, I would say, rely on masonry features of a special techniques, of special marks on the stones called boss. That we know were used at a certain period, and that's how it can be identified. With regards to the eastern wall, it's a little bit more complex. We don't really see, we see where it starts, but we don't really see where the Solomon temple platform ends. Well, we don't see the stones this much. However, we actually do, but in a different way. We don't see the masonry marks there, but there is a so-called bend in the wall. And that bend in the wall is exactly at you see where the excavation is written, and this orange square. So where the orange square touches the yellow square, this is exactly where, well, yellow rectangle, that's exactly where that bend in the wall is. So that's quite significant. So we basically now have been able to identify these interesting, at least I would say it's recognized by archaeological community way outside of Israel. So we have the Eastern Wall. We have identified that. We have identified the Northern Wall, the Western Wall, and we will be talking obviously about the southern part a little bit later. And yes, here we can see that the Muslim platform wall, the platform, it doesn't run parallel. So now, what about the beginning of the Eastern Wall? So there is an offset in the Eastern Wall. So the northern eastern part of the wall was identified because there is an offset. There is a little section that kind of juts out a little bit, and it looks exactly like there had been a tower at some point. And exactly from the north, it was absolutely essential to have a tower. We spoke about the Antonia fortress, right? That was built in the north by Herod, because from the north, the terrain, the bedrock was very high, which made it very easy to anyone to penetrate the city, to invade the city from the north. That's why extra fortifications were needed, such as Antonia fortress and then that tower. And this is how we understand that must have been the end. That must have been the edge of the northeastern wall. So from the west, so that line in red, this is the western wall of the platform. Same measurements, 500 royal cubits. I'm not going into detail what exactly 500 cubits, how we know that they're 500 cubits, because this had been discussed before and also on the previous story. So we need to save time. I don't want to turn it into endless soap opera. That's not really what I need. And well, let's talk about the southern eastern part. So that is, you see, there is a bend in the wall. If you take a look at the area to the right, so Solomon's porch, and there is this thick black line that says bend in the wall. So that bend actually marks the edge of the east southern wall of the Temple Mount. There you go. It's on everything up below that band. It's from a later period, that is the Hasmonean period, the 2nd century BCE, and later on 1st century BCE, Herodian period. We're going to be talking about it in more detail. I'm just kind of putting it all together for you. Well, so this is the eastern wall of the Temple Mount and also the Old City. As you know, these walls actually happens to be both, this particular section. This is the Eastern Gate or the Golden Gate, which at the moment is used as a mosque, which means that there is no way non-Muslim can enter this gate. However, we already spoke about it briefly, so I'm just going to quickly dwell on that. That's exactly what I was talking about with regards to the first temple period stones. So there are some stones that are visible that have clearly the features of masonry, the marks of masonry from the first temple period, that is the Solomon period. And there are even photographs taken in the 19th century also showing the difference in the stones. Again, thank you so much, Lindred Meyer, for all these amazing visual aids. Well, for example, this is that stone from the first temple period, and it's there just in the base of the eastern gate. And from the other side as well, there is another boss on another stone that comes the Solomon period, first temple period. Now, that's what I was talking about, the extensions. Once again, Solomon platform, orange. This a little stretch, yellow, that's Hasmonean, that's the 2nd century BCE. Herod expansion, the green one, plus the Antonia fortress built from the north just to grant extra protection where it was absolutely essential. So we visited also that northern section of Antonia fortress, We cannot visit the fortress because it's gone. Jerusalem was completely rebuilt in 132, 135 Common Era into a pagan city, and there was nothing left from the previous Jerusalem because Emperor Hadrian, wanted to make sure there wouldn't be a trace of Judea left at all. That's exactly when he renamed Judea into Syria, Palestina, and you know the story. So that's where the name Palestine actually comes from. So what we know that according to archaeology that this northwestern part section of the wall, it's the territory of the former fortress. However, right now, if you look behind that section of the Temple Mount, you will see the school for well, it's just the school for boys in Jerusalem, the Arab school in Al-Umriya, and it's in the Muslim quarter. That's what the courtyard looks. And if you look at the window, oh well, you will see the you will see the Dome of the Rock, and basically you will be seeing the Temple Mount, and that's where the windows of the Al-Umriya school are. With regards to masonry, well, as we spoke about last time, you can actually see the niches, the holes in the wall, square-shaped niches. So, as you can see, there was the so-called portico, northern portico, and that was the kind of covered section. So, and as you can see there on the in the wall, there are some niches. There will be also better image. You see the sockets. Those were the sockets for the beams for that northern store, the covered section of the colonnade. And they are there, and they are placed exactly where they should be at equal distance, and well, the right distance and the right place. So that's just another interesting brick in the wall. Now we are back to the modern day, present day Temple Mount platform, where the Dome of the Rock is, and we are elevated. So this area is higher than the rest of the Temple Mount because below, well, inside this Dome of the Rock shrine, there is actually the bedrock. So this is the highest area, the Mount Moriah, and we spoke already about its importance uh, for uh, for Jews because that was the cornerstone of everything. The binding of Isaac took place, and so this is where everything started. Also, this is the place where, well, why was the Dome of the Rock? Because this place also marks the very important event in Islam, where Muhammad had his night journey and where he ascended to heaven. Well, so that's why this place is so important for Muslims too. So let's put it like this: we are now standing at the border between the platform, the modern day Muslim platform, but also this happens to be the platform, the edge of the platform of the Solomon period. And how do we know that? We spoke briefly that, well, it was the last thing we spoke about last time, that there, just right behind the Temple Mount, on the platform, there were discovered cisterns. They were discovered a lot of cisterns, basically all around the Temple Mount, and they were walls. So if there is a wall of the cistern, that means that there actually was a wall. Now we need to move from the Temple Mount. We need to go down the steps, and that's what we are going to do. And then we'll be switching towards the eastern wall. Well, I know you probably cannot even see what I'm showing, but so we need to take the steps down and explore that northeastern side. I don't have a good quality video of that particular part, so I'm using the Google Maps a little bit. So from the steps, you need to go left. You still need to go north just to be able to see where the platform of Solomon ended. So we spoke that it definitely coincided with the Temple Mount platform current day, but was there any are there any signs of its continuation till the till the eastern side? Well, as I said, there were found a lot of First Temple period reservoirs, so cisterns, and well, some of them were found on the edge of the Temple Mount, which is the sign of the wall that had existed there. So that's how we have been able to, not we, I mean, archaeologists have been able to identify the edges of it. So here we coincide. Well, it's amazing. Just imagine the size of it, and there are cisterns even bigger than that because every drop of water counted. Incredible, absolutely incredible. As you walk on the Temple Mount, since archaeological excavations are not allowed, but um, there were several big repair projects, construction projects held. Also, there was an earthquake in 1920s, and as a result of the destructions, well, caused by the earthquake, there were some construction works held, and that's how a lot of things surfaced. Also, just the basic fixing of the sewage pipes, even. It also gives you a little extra content. So there were found different, well, here it says the channel. It's also from the Rivet Mayor's website, by the way. So channels for the new sewage pipes in the northern part of the Temple Mount, and as they were digging the new channels for the pipes, there would be found old stones, and that's quite interesting. Since well, you cannot take them. Archaeologists cannot take them. Archaeologists cannot study them. So you cannot take anything from the Temple Mount. So that's the thing. You cannot study it thoroughly. You can only just look at it, do kind of the so-called survey, basically a superficial analysis of the findings, and this is it. So this is also was this photo was taken by Elizabeth Mayers in his during his big study of 1960s. So he was able to find that at that time, it doesn't mean it's still there, but back then he found even an interesting sections of the paving um, of definitely later period, I mean earlier period, but which period? That's a question because no studies were made. And so this photo was taken from the Antonia photos, which is the Alumria school. So this is still more this is the northwestern side of the Temple Mount. And there was found paving, there was found foss, there were found these gigantic stones, which uh, clearly date back to a much earlier period. Now they're all covered up. As you can see, there were very few trees growing at that point, but now I would say it's a very green area of Jerusalem, the greenest of the old city, for sure. There are almost no trees growing in the Jerusalem old city, to be honest. There's just no space even for people with 40 plus thousand people living in just 1 square kilometers. Well, it's 1 square kilometer. That's just, I would say there's not enough space even for a bush. Yeah. Um, so this is 1975. So Elizabeth Mayer spent more than 10 years, and then he will be coming back. There would be more research carried out. So then, an interesting masonry. The next to the remains of a wall, the top of which is still visible, 1975. Which period wall? That's a good question, but it actually coincides with the with the calculations of where that wall had to be laid. But again, no with no analysis, it's really hard to tell. So a close-up of the door still in the ancient wall. Unfortunately, without excavation, the date of the wall cannot be established. So this could be of okay any period. Mm, that was it. So now it's not available. It's covered up. There are trees growing on it. There are also interesting marks on cut out in the bedrock, so that you could actually at some point even see the bedrock. So this all we saw on our way towards the eastern edge of the Temple Mount platform. So now we are meeting at the corner. So we've already passed the 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 Temple Mount platform, and we are just walking on the lower section of the Temple Mount. We need to actually make sure we can see that we need to see that it's exactly how the wall continued to reach the eastern wall. And as I said, exactly in the end of it, so if you put straight line, if you draw a straight line on the map or on the photo, that line would exactly coincide with that offset in the wall, meaning the edge of it, meaning the tower. That's that's exactly how it works. So Lieutenant Mayor did all that, and now with all this heavy lifting done by Lieutenant Mayor, we can just, I would say, it gives me good enough arguments to trust that idea. So, and from that tower and all the way to the south, for 500 cubits, that would be exactly the Solomon period platform. We need that. We need that not to rebuild the temple, because there is also a concern in some community that the third temple is will be built or is already being built, which is not truth. And the point of this is not to to find, I would say, reasons and excuses to start the construction. No, that's not the point of this tour, obviously. Yes. So, yeah. And remember all these stones. So these stones are exactly on that line, and they align exactly next to the eastern gate. And this part uh, of the wall ends with the bend in the wall, and that marks the edge, the border of the Solomon platform. There you go. It's all highlighted with the yellow. So we found that. We found the offset in the, well, we found the offset. Now the offset is very close to the eastern gate. And the eastern gate, it was the entrance through the, from the Mount of Olives, and just across the Kidron Valley. The eastern gate is exactly that gate through which Jesus entered Jerusalem many times, because he lived in the up north of Israel, right? So he lived in the Galilee, and he would be coming from that area and entering through the eastern gate. We did a tour of Dominus Flevit Church, which is translated from Latin as God wept, because upon entering Jerusalem for the last time in his pilgrimage, he cried when he saw the Temple Mount, because he saw that shortly after that Jerusalem would fall. And that's exactly what happened in 70 AD when the Romans burned the temple. And it wouldn't be long way before the entire city itself would be destroyed. Yes, but Eastern Gate was just the enter to the Temple Mount. Before that, there still had to be uh, before entering the temple itself, there was still a lot of restrictions. There was needed special purification done before even entering the eastern gate. So we would say that this is um, the most important gate, because according to the Jewish tradition, it's also the gate through which the Jewish Messiah would come, and this is the gate through which, according to Christian narrative, Jesus would come back again. Since he had already done it once, he can do it for the second time too. That's what the Christian narrative has. And yeah, so this is the Mount of Olives. It's all the Mount of Olives, all of it. So, which is the big part of it is the Jewish cemetery. There are also a lot of churches. Um, well, because they mark the arrival of Jesus to Jerusalem and many places where he stayed. Um, so I have spoken about it before, so this I'm not going to repeat myself here because it's going to take us so much time, and we are focused on the Temple Mount anyway. So now I mentioned the city of David. So once again, where is the Temple Mount and where is the city of David? So the Temple Mount is part of the old city of Jerusalem, but it's not the oldest city. The oldest is the city of David, and the city of David is way smaller, and the terrain there is so uneven. It's like a slope. So all the arguments supporting the idea, the theory of the first temple being built in the city of David, they just don't hold the water because there is just not enough space for it. Thank you so much, Holy Land, Holy Land side, for doing all this work. It just doesn't make sense. It just can't work. There's no place for this 500 square cubits, royal cubits. And So with regards to the Temple Mount, when Herod decided to extend it and rebuild it, he didn't have a flat terrain at all. And that's why he needed to build up arches. Obviously not he, but his architects, his engineers and builders, and the arches look this way. And you can see that it's, I would say, quite a sophisticated engineering work over there. And then upon these arches, since the roof and the base was supposed to be very heavy, since the big temple would be placed there, only the arches could support the the uh, the floor of the Temple Mount. And then on top of it, a big, very big temple was built. You can see it. And also, now I would like to draw your attention to the southern side of it. So to the left, you can see an interesting portico. You can see an interesting terrace gallery. So we will be talking about it closer to the end of the tour, and this is a very important area also in the Christian narrative. This is um, it's believed to be the place where the Pentecost actually happened. Well, we'll talk about it. Speaking of the arches, we have the arches. There are a lot of arches. There is a lot of underground spaces on the Temple Mount, and most of them are used as mosques. Um, So after that bend at the wall, there is the area or short area, just a little extension from the 2nd century BCE called the Hasmonean expansion, because it was built during the period when the Hasmoneans ruled Israel after defeating the Greeks. That's exactly why Halloween is celebrated by, oh, sorry, Halloween? Hanukkah is celebrated. What am I saying? Hanukkah is celebrated. Now, for a moment, let's walk past this Golden Gate. Let's walk towards the south, to the south, and let's try to see if we can notice the bend in the wall, or maybe just difference in the stones, or maybe something again. Well, the Eastern Gate. I told you that there are some stones from the first temple period and some posts. So this is what we have. So this photo was taken in the 19th century, and it belongs to, well, it was taken by Palestine Exploration Fund. At that point, it was not a mosque at that point. It was just one of the covered areas, one of the areas, underground spaces. So that's the stones that we've been talking about. So just again, since we're passing by the Eastern Gate, there's another opportunity for me to show this to you, because this type of things are just so difficult to keep in mind. And right now, as I said, the Eastern Gate is also a mosque. I have never been there. I mean, non-Muslim cannot, but there are some photographs. This is the photograph from the internet, I think from even Wikipedia. I'm not sure, and that's why no even survey is possible because of this restrictions imposed on the inner spaces of the Temple Mount. Now that's what the Eastern Gate looks like from the inside. I mean, uh, from the side of the Temple Mount itself. It's sealed. It has been sealed multiple times. The last time it was sealed by the Ottomans. Before that, the Christians, the Crusaders, uncovered it. They opened it, and yes, there was even entrance to the Temple Mount through the Eastern Gate. Well, but then it was closed. It was sealed, and it it's been like this ever since the Ottoman period. Photographs from 19th century. We will keep on walking past the Eastern Gate from the outside and from the inside of the Temple Mount. Before we walk to the southern edge, I also want you to see what it looks like closer to the south. So right now we are passing by the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I'm not going to be repeating myself about the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Again, there's a lot of archaeology there, even though we cannot visit it. So this is already what you see. It's the exactly the corner of the eastern and the southern wall, and that area that I'm showing you now, that is already the southern edge of the Temple Mount. This is still the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Al-Aqsa Mosque is big, and it was rebuilt several times, by the way. And the last big construction work took place in 1930s after that big earthquake that shattered the roof, and also when a lot of inner spaces were discovered, since they also needed um, to secure the columns and just the vaults of Al-Aqsa Mosque. That's the video I filmed a few months ago when I was in Israel, and there you can see the mount. Well, this is also the edge of the Mount of Olives over there. So technically, we will now be focusing on this more like southern territory, so the territory closer to the southern edge of the Temple Mount, and also the areas that is underneath. And that's exactly where, so exactly on that southern part, that's exactly where that so-called Solomon portico was. That's according to, let's say, the findings and the descriptions of the Temple Mount. That's exactly where the Pentecost and the teachings of Jesus took place. We will be talking about it more in details in the next episode, but this is for you to kind of keep in mind. So the band on the wall finishes there. We still haven't walked past the wall from the outside to see if there is anything that can be noticed with the naked eye. In fact, no, you cannot really see that band in the wall from the Solomon period. It's not there, but you can see it from above. If there is a good aerial footage, you can see it. Other than that, no, but there is something else you can see. So over there, that's the northern side, and we walking past the eastern gate itself. You can see this Muslim cemetery. So the cemetery is there at least since the Ottoman period, but most probably even before. And as you see, well, as we spoke about it, the Muslim cemeteries there to make sure to prevent any messiahs entering, since the dead flesh is the most impure thing, and technically speaking, Messiah cannot walk on the graves, but definitely Messiah could work around it if needed. So we cannot really see the bend in the wall from that period. We cannot, but we see different stones from later period and later extensions, which is also quite interesting. We'll be talking about it. And the graves go all the way to the very end, the Kidron Valley itself. So that Kidron Valley, that's where the inscriptions are. The Solomon platform, Hasmonean expansion, that's the Kidron Valley. That's where a lot of graves were even in the first temple period. So anyway, that area is full of graves, and there was built a bridge for anyone to cross atop the graves. There's not this bridge anymore. We spoke about it when we did a detailed tour of the walls and gates of Jerusalem. So now we're focusing on something else. So we are focusing on the difference in stones in the more southern sections. So yes, indeed, there is a difference in stones. You can see that you can even see the seam and how different the stones are. So this is clearly this gives us the I would say very good understanding of when the extensions were made. Also some masonry, and also the size of the stones and the seams itself, plus something that's on the top of the Temple Mount, I mean inside the Temple Mount. We'll be going back there on the platform also shortly. From here, by the way, from this side, you can see that the city of David is actually goes down, and we did a tour. We did tours in the city of David, but this summer I happened to have visited several important excavation sites, which are still not open to public. There's still ongoing excavations. So at some point, I may be able to take you there again, just to share with you those details. Also, one more important thing about the bend in the wall is that the bend in the wall completely coincides. So the southeastern side completely coincides with the northern side, and the northern edge, the sorry, not the northern. What am I saying? The western edge. It actually coincides with the place of the Nicanor Gate. That's how we were able to identify exactly the borders between the Herodian and other extensions. The interesting thing is, however, so I've been saying that it's 500 cubits each side. In fact, there is a little difference exactly in the southern side of the Temple Mount. It's 495 royal cubit instead of 500. So the difference is not really that big, since the royal cubit was just the length, from elbow to the fingers, and just a little bit more, the length, the width of the palm. That was basically it. It's not so much, and archaeologists explain it just because from that side already you can see that the terrain changes, the elevations change, and um, this could have been a little bit different. There's not really any particular explanation to that, most probably due to the terrain. As you can see, the offal area that is now outside the present day Temple Mount, as you can see, it's all tilted, and the elevations kind of are pretty steep there. So it's just a, a little difference. I don't see that it is actually crucial. So so often, just in case, that's the area that I've been just talking about, with a significant change in elevation. They're pretty steep. Now, you can see where it's written the first temple period. So first temple period, the wall is all done in the yellow color. So that's the Solomon Temple platform, and it finishes exactly where the further gates would be built in the subsequent periods. So that's how we were able to identify that western edge of it, the southwestern edge of it. Now, so again, we are in this east southern corner, walking on the Temple Mount. Okay, what's underneath? I have spoken about it on a couple of tours ago. So in fact, underneath us is a big underground synagogue. I spoke about it because there was a big scandal. There was a big scandal because the Muslims, without any agreement with the state, without any approval from the state, without any permission, started digging the space under the Hasmonean expansion and the Herodian expansion. And their idea was to turn it into a mosque, and that's exactly what they did. So the seams we saw are the borders between the Hasmonean and the Herodian sections. And where the seam is, well, we can see that. We can see that seam. We can also see that the stones are arranged differently. In the stones, they're actually are arranged differently because that was the corner. Again, thank you so much, Linwood Mayer, for just showing it to us, where you can see how the stones are allocated differently. And the stones from the left, that is from the Herodian period, are way more regular in their shape. Not perfect, but clearly different and more regular. And where that seam is, so the structures, the headers, that's, I would say, quite um, indicative of the corner. That's how the corners will be built. Now, okay, so we've spoken, I've mentioned already that the entire Jerusalem was rebuilt right into a pagan city by Emperor Hadrian by 135 Common Era, but I didn't really say what was there on the Temple Mount, since, well, Judaism was absolutely banned. Well, Christianity at that point uh, definitely was a red flag for Romans, but it was still a sect. It was still very illegal, and it was mostly kept kind of, everything was kept under the carpets, under the cover. So it was meant to become an important pagan site because Hadrian didn't want any further Jewish pilgrimage, any Christian pilgrimage, God forbid. So he built there the big temple. Maybe the temple of Jupiter. Maybe. We don't know. There is no archaeology. So, well, it is mentioned that yes, he built a pagan temple, but there is no masonry, there's no stone, there were no findings really, just a little bit of the remains of the stones, but these stones, well, it says here the remains of the crepidoma, so it's a bit of the elements of the base of the temple, but there is no indication of what exactly temple it was. So no idea. I like it that there was also mentioned the bakery. And the bakery, by the way, that's interesting. So I'm going to get into this. It's quite interesting, really. So that bakery is already located outside of the temple wall, and it's exactly that area of the southwestern section of the wall, and that's where the Davidson Center is. That's one of my first tours. That's where one of my first tours actually was, tours of Jerusalem outside of the old city. And this is also where the bakeries were, and also the shops. So the Romans kind of carried on that idea. Okay, there is a different temple there, but they made sure they would still have the bakery no matter what, because be it a pagan city or a Jewish city or a Christian city or whatever, yeah, bakery would always be there. I like it. Thank you, Linwood Mayer, for putting this up. That's interesting. So we can't go downstairs because those are also mosques, the mosque. And you cannot approach the eastern gate from the inside as well. You can't take the steps because There are guards there. They're just making sure you don't even approach, you don't even go one step down. I mean it. So they are especially, I don't know, they're especially careful with the Eastern Gate. But this particular mosque is something. So I will just quickly remind you because this is important for our understanding of actually what's going on in the southern part of it. And I know I'm so sorry, I'm getting really nerdy, but what can I do? What can I say? I mean, yes, this type of things you really need to dig quite deep, like literally. So before building in those arches from Herodian period, before building the mosque there, they needed to get all the soil and the precious soil and all this dust, it were like about from 300 to 400 trucks loaded with this soil, and they unloaded it in the Kidron Valley. That was absolutely outrageous. And 5 years later, after that incident in 1999, the state of Israel gave permission to archaeologists to actually take this precious earth with everything that was in it all mixed together. So from then on, there was no hope to be able to date it just by layers, how things are actually accumulate with time. And this is when the sifting project started. But we also, when we walked past along the eastern wall, we saw a lot of piles of dirt. Well, because when the Muslims found out about the whole thing and the possible excavations and the researches of that dump, they decided not to get rid of this dump, and they just kept it on the Temple Mount. So the excavation site. So this is over there where the entrance to that underground mosque is. So that's exactly where the arches and the so-called Solomon stables used to be. This name comes from the Crusader period. So the Crusaders thought that this type of arches definitely, when they were sure they fit the stables for horses. And since they didn't know obviously any of that, but then they thought that the temple they're looking at it's the way it was built by Solomon. Well, the Temple Mount, I mean, not the temple. The temple had no longer been there for about 1,000 years, right? It's just that the Temple Mount was from the Solomon period, so they had no idea, so they just named the place Solomon Stables. Just that. So, and the Sifton project, so it's mm, mm, a very big project. Anyone can participate, and it's a very interesting experience for everyone, for tourists, for locals, um, anyone, and also for those people like me who who have always wanted to become an archaeologist, but decided just not to. Maybe when I retire, I'm not sure. Maybe when I realize I'm done with guiding, but at the moment, I really don't see this happen. So once again, we are approaching the southern end of it, and during the next episode, we will be talking about the very important event that took place here in the Christian narrative in the first century BCE during the times of Jesus. We'll be talking about the Pentecost. So yes, that's the territory of the Herod expansion already. And we'll be talking about what Jesus could see, how people could access it. We'll be definitely talking more about the Ophel area, which is exactly behind that wall down there. So that area with the very steep slopes. And exactly in that Herodian expansion, that's where the royal stoa was located. So I think this is where we're going to wrap this up. Sorry for being so nerdy and also repeating some stuff, but again, it's important to just build up this narrative. Okay, so the chat is open now for your questions. So after all these tours of the Hanukkah Christmas markets, some mild wine, a bit of a bit of sugar, and then the singing. Yeah, so doing the tours of the Temple Mount and the hardcore archaeology and history, that's quite a challenge, I would say. So let me share with you the links, especially to those for those who joined us a little later. Hello. I'm sharing the links for the upcoming weekends and the more tours that are going to be added some at some point this week. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm just wondering why this would not be posted. Ah, okay. Uh, Wait a minute. Thank you, Dorley. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And well, it's especially well important to hear it also from an Israeli because this is, always more responsibility here. And I'm glad that you've been discovering something new. This is a very, I would say, very detailed stuff, and but this is an important thing if you want to find facts that defy, I would say, pretty foolish theories. Well, you got need to to use that. Sorry, that's been too much talking, I would say. So, all great. Thank you for all the for the fastest hour of the week. Will you speak of the Pentecost? Yes, Cindy, I will be speaking of the Pentecost exactly in the next episode. Exactly. Uh, well, it doesn't make sense to start talking about it and then saying, okay, the rest we'll be talking about later. Yeah, of course, that's where we'll be talking about. Thank you so much, Dolores, for the tips. Thank you. I never knew so much about the deeply dug excavations in Jerusalem. Yeah, and also not excavations, but just the surveys, and so much you can say just by even looking at the photographs from the 19th century. That's true. And there's like every day, probably even today, but there must have been made some findings, but it's gonna take years before these findings would be published in some scientific journals and some important um, resources. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure they still have so much there to talk about. And well, that's pendant with the menorah that is 1,300 years old. That's quite impressive at that point. So exactly the seventh, well, roughly 700s, right? uh, seventh, eighth century. This is already the Muslim period, and Jews were not allowed. Well, I mean, at that point, it was strictly, let's put it like that. It was restricted. It wasn't prohibited, but it was very strict there with presence of non-Muslims there, and that's interesting how that pendant with the menorah ended up there. That's quite interesting. We'll see. Thank you so much, Maria. Merry Christmas, and well, it's still Hanukkah, so still happy Hanukkah, and also have a great weekend, everyone. Grisha is asleep already. Yes, he did not interrupt me. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Thank you, everyone. As you know, I would always appreciate your support. It can be a PayPal donation. You could buy me a coffee. On my website, you can find a lot of other tours scheduled and also some of the recordings. Can Israel follow the science of archaeology on people understanding what could Jerusalem become? Sorry, I need to think what it actually means. Can Israel follow the science on archaeology on people understanding what could you... Sorry. Yes, Maria, that's quite an exciting thing. Sorry, Ekeke, could you please explain what you actually mean? So, there would have been a lot of archaeology carried out in the, I would say, in the most diligent way, but you cannot really dig there. So what we have, it's the photographs that were taken, for example, by the British archaeologists that just oversaw, that they just observed the repair works after the after the big earthquake that took place in the 1920s, and we spoke about it on the previous episodes. So there is a lot of archaeology all around the Temple Mount. For example, the Western Wall tunnels. That's the museum you can access from the Western Wall. Anyone can access the Western Wall Plaza as well. You don't have to be a Jew to enter it. And then you can visit the Western Wall tunnels and see all the archaeology there outside of the Temple Mount. The Western Wall that is the wall from Herodian period, and you can see these gigantic stones. We did the tours there, so all those tours are available. The recordings are available for my sponsors, and it's just one. If it's just one or two videos you want to see, it's not an issue. Yeah, so there's a lot of archaeology very diligently done. And had we been allowed to dig on the Temple Mount, I'm sure we would have found so much more. And plus, when it gets to Israel and excavations, there are a lot of international groups of archaeologists that are invited to all sorts of excavations exactly because of this bias thing. It's always in the air. If I get the question right, I'm not entirely sure I follow this comment because it doesn't have any punctuation marks. I'm not sure how exactly to put it together. Maybe I'm just tired. But please feel free to send me an email and we can talk about it in private as well. This is never an issue. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Happy holidays, and I'll see you next weekend, already after Christmas, but still before the new year. And as you know, here in Georgia, everything is just about to begin. So there's gonna be a lot more festivities coming your way, and that's how I'm going to definitely prolong your festivities. I meant people can revision history of direction of the square meters where archaeology. Well, this it's not the square. Well, so these royal cubits that I was talking about, this is the old measurement from 3,000 years ago. Um, we it was calculated, like it was explained in the resources, in the written resources, what approximately this cubit was, and then it was recalculated into feet, into meters. Yeah, of course. Thank you, Dolly. Okay, thank you, everyone. I will see you next week. Bye bye.